Hello, hello, hello. This is Linwood Cox Jr. with the Book of Aliel cast. Thanks for hanging out with me. As I say in weeks, for those who are weary in spirit will gain understanding, and for those who lament will accept instruction. I'm going to be finishing my series today. Sorry for the delay for you, if you watched this like a year after I made this, then maybe it's not a delay for you. But either way, today we're going to be talking about men versus women part 3. Really talking about mainly how women and men, men and women correlate, gather, relate to each other. So I hope that, so typically when I have my long messages, I get long-winded, but hopefully you can stay with me, sit down. I promise you that throughout the duration of this video that I have something for you to offer. So hopefully you can take and spare 9 minutes to just sit back, relax, and listen to what I have to say. So let's get started. So when we talk about men versus women, the title of the message couldn't be any more wrong. Why? Because I want to make a largely compelling argument that it was never supposed to be that way, that men and women were never supposed to be pitted against each other, that there's value and that there's a story to be told with the two in cohesion that was designed and made by God, but then also works very well within culture when it comes to business in the corporate world. So when it comes to people's vocations. So let's just start with how I grew up. For me personally, I had probably a traditional American childhood, average middle class. My mom worked a 9-to-5. My dad worked one as well. My mom worked more so in the commercial space and then in social work. And my dad, for the majority in management between restaurants and then also with being a salesman. The truth is that I didn't spend a lot of time with my parents, and this is no dispersions on my parents, but it just is what it is. My parents spent more time, I think, arguing about where funds were going to go and working than they actually did. I mean, they tried to, but the reality is that the expectations when it came to working, they couldn't actually spend a lot of time with me and also my younger sibling, my brother. My relationship with my dad. So, I mean, and this is also nothing on him. I mean, my relationship with my father is good now, but as far as an identity, when it comes to being grafted into a story, I really didn't know who I was. My name is Linwood. And you might be wondering, the Book of Aliel cast, why it's named that. I've said in other videos from Isaiah 29, I got the name Aliel believing that there was a vagabond people, that there's a prodigal tribe of people like myself, and that God has named that he wants to come into the story of who they truly are by following him. And then so that's why I named the cast the Book of Aliel, but my name is Linwood. And then so I never knew what that meant. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, even though my dad was at home, to be able to, when I went out into the world and asked myself as an identity, we're talking about the identity between men and women, and that definitely has direct correlations with whom your father, if you're a son, and then who your mother is, if you're a daughter, who you believe that you are. And I really didn't know. And even then, I think that what we've seen throughout culture when it's come to both men and women that have grown up in the typical household now, right, is that when boys saw the way that I did, the way that the role was played by the man, they didn't necessarily want to follow that role. And the same thing when it comes to the trajectory of women. When they see the role of a woman within a marriage, within a structure, within the world, it's easy for a woman to say, hey, that's not me. And I get it, from the abuses, whether or not the abuses are hurtful or what's the word, more fervent compared to being more passive. Either way, people get hurt in relationships. And then so it's easy then because people misidentify with themselves and looking and seeing what 5-10 years down the role of a man looks for them 5-10 years down the road, see what a woman it is. It's the reason why we've had a huge problem with the essences of identity and culture, and people having phobias against then their very gender. Why? Because it's without question that there are very horrific things that people are experiencing in relationships and being secondhand to relationships that makes them not want to actively act out those roles. And then so it's huge. I won't get into a huge portion of that, but then to move on then, so what are you saying? What are you saying, Linwood? Like, how were men and women actually supposed to be integrated with each other? I spoke within the 2 sessions about men and women. The first thing that I will do is say that there's a huge relationship that's been broken between women and men specifically. Why? Because men were always supposed to be the leaders. And so the conversation has to start that way. Now, if your opinion is different and if you're a woman and that sparks something in you that says, hey, well, no man's leading me, I'm sorry. It's just what I believe. I believe that men were created to be primarily the leaders in a household, not necessarily within an organization or a business, but within a household, yes. And when it comes to then what a man's role is, you have to go off of what I said before. And in the last message that I spoke about, I spoke that men's values are to bring freedom, right, and expression for people, being able to carry out their identity, as well then as being able to then attribute the value necessarily for them to be able to accomplish that freedom. I don't believe that women are born naturally with that aptitude to want that. They come into congruence with a man who is free. All of a sudden she realizes, man, this is very freeing. And men were created to garner that, to be able to walk around and to be able to say, as leaders, having forethought, and to be able to see particular things that were happening in the time based off of related information in the past as well. What's the way forward? I believe in congruency then, not apart from a man, right? A woman has a very remarkable role within culture and then also within the family unit. If a man has value and he says that value is here, well, then the woman comes and she says, well, hey, I'm a nurturer, right? All people want to be nurtured. And it's not a skill that necessarily men can't have, but at the same time, it's not primarily what they can attribute to themselves to be acted out. I believe that that's for women. And it's no matter what type of woman it is, no more than it is for an expression for the freedom in a man to be expressed in 2 different ways and for people to misinterpret what those identities are. The same thing is for women. As being a nurturer, a woman can choose to nurture in what seem like very startling comparisons, but then act out that identity the same way. And then the truth is to be able to take what a man has set value to, right, and said that this is what is valuable, and then choose to nurture it, and then from there comes abundance. My suggestions have been that if you don't believe me, then look at the way that the corporate world works in the first place. I mean, the model is acted out all the time, regardless of whether or not we want to give reality to it or not. In most places, regardless of whether or not you argue if this role is set for the particular marriage, the archetype of a marriage, it's modeled in the corporate world, and it's been modeled on media more times than between movies and TV shows. Has been modeled between corporate and what we market men to do and what we market women to do in an organization a million times over. So argue if you want to, but this is what I believe. And what I believe is that when men and women come together, they can do something amazing that they could never do right apart. The brokenness then between a man and a woman, and a person listening to this and saying, hey, like that identity for you, whether that's a man and a woman, if you want to be in a relationship later on, if you want to actively be whole within an organization, that identity has to be healed first. But I don't believe that men and women were meant to be separated from each other, pitted against each other. I believe that they were meant to be together as created to be one together. So I'll stop there. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. If any person needs any consulting advice, please reach out to me. Other than that, thank you so much for listening to this series, and God bless you, and I'll see you next time.